Hi. So I was just doing random things today, just practicing for video games, but I was having YouTube videos play in the background, and one of them was a pretty interesting video by MunchingOrange. If you don't know who he is, legendary, legendary PokeTuber. I love him. I love him so much. I love that guy. Congrats on him on being a father, starting a family. That's dope. That's sick. I used to watch him all the time. I watched his X and Y series. I watched his Pokemon Naranja. Watched his other ROM hack videos. Watched him play Black and White 2. Bit of bit of Omega Ruby. But he made a video recently called Should Pokemon Have Stayed 2D? And I'd say he brings up some pretty good points. But I haven't seen all of it. I saw like 4 minutes of it. So the rest, after 4 minutes, it will be pretty much my blind reaction. But overall, I'm quite excited. Uh, Personally, for me, no, I don't think it should have stayed 2D. If it stayed 2D, we I don't think they would have made the regions that they made now, like Kalos, Alola, Paldea, Galar, like as amazing and memorable as they are. I think each generation should progress. Personally, I think they should progress with the technology, and I'm sure that's what many people want. That anyways, people want a 3D Pokemon game, and we have those now. Even with Scarlet Violet, we are definitely like getting what we've all wanted, like exploring, like actually going, like seeing the Pokemon like in front of you and you catch it. Even in Legends Arceus, they had that. So that's kind of what we all wanted as fans. But yeah, I really think this is the way to go with 3D. But 2D isn't half bad either, and I, he brings up obviously the last 2D generation Black and White 2, but that's where I kind of ended it, and I was like, I wanna react to this. I wanna see what else he has to say about this. So let's start this.
Should Pokemon games have stayed 2D? This is a discussion I see
Should
all
they
too
have
often
stayed
online,
2D?
mostly by older fans that have been around long enough to see the main series evolve from cute 2D sprite worlds
That's
into the
kind of
third
mean.
dimension. But what if Pokemon remained 2D and Game Freak continued to hone the style they started off with?
I wonder
What would
what.
those games look like? And could they
Okay,
actually have
look
been
at that.
better than what we have today? Now you might be
I actually do
thinking,
wonder what like
Munch, you're old
Kalos
man,
would have
of
looked like
course
in
you like the 2D
2D,
games more.
and like
And while I must
Paldea.
admit that
I
growing
don't
up
think
with
it would
Gen
have
3
been.
does give me
I
some
really don't think it
nostalgic
would
bias towards the
like
2D
good.
sprite style, my goal with this video
We
isn't
would
to
the
determine whether
franchise wouldn't
2D
really
or
be going
3D
anywhere.
looked better, as I believe in terms of visuals at
I
least,
really like
the answer
Scarlet
is
Violet, by
really
the
a
way.
matter of preference. Instead, I want to take you all on a journey through Pokemon history to examine how the shift to 3D impacted the games in more ways than just
Okay.
graphics, and hopefully by
Yeah.
the end we'll have a
Sword
better
was kind of meh.
understanding of just how much this transition changed the core of our favorite monster catching series. So if you're excited for this trip down memory lane, don't forget to hit that like button, and let's begin
I
with
hit
the
that.
dawn of this visual transformation.
I
I
hit
suppose
that
we should
like
first
button.
establish when the shift to 3D happened exactly, and while most fans would say Pokemon X and Y were the first main series 3D
It's
games, we
definitely the
actually
GameCube
started seeing
games.
hints towards this future since way back in Gen
Oh
4.
wait, yeah,
A lot
that's
of
we mentioned
objects
this.
making up the environment of Sinnoh, like the buildings and mountains, were actually 3D. And the same goes for
I love
Heart
this
Gold
song, by
Soul
the way.
Silver, where we even started seeing some of these objects in movement,
Seeing
but
that
Pokemon Platinum took
in
things
like
to a
2010
whole
was
nother
crazy.
level. The
Like
Distortion
2011.
World was probably the first time I remember really being wowed by graphics in a Pokemon game.
Distortion World goes
Surfing
crazy
around
though.
these floating islands sideways and upside down while this swirling black hole spun in the background was pretty freaking mind-blowing as a kid. But of course things would get a
It was
whole
crazy.
lot crazier in Gen 5 with Pokemon Black and White, which introduced us to unforgettable locations like
Okay, this is my
Castelia
first
City.
Pokemon
I
game.
still remember my first
So
time crossing the Sky Arrow.
this kind of set my standard for what I expected Pokemon games. Not graphics wise, obviously, because well, I mean, I played Heart Gold. I played Soul Silver after I played White. I was like, okay, this is like it's a new gen, so it's gonna be better. But then story wise, it's just what set the bar for me. This and Soul Silver, because like those are pretty crazy stories for me personally. Black and White was like, oh wow, you gotta like, in order to beat the game, you have to like beat this boss, and if you actually want to beat the game, you have to do the Elite Four, which I haven't beaten by the way. But then in Soul Silver, uh, you catch Lugia on your way to Thing, and then you catch Ho-Oh later on, and all the other legendaries. But yeah, that this is the game that set the bar for me personally.
Bridge, and seeing the camera angle shift from the
And
top-down
no game
perspective
except
every other
Scarlet Violet
Pokemon
has
game had
probably
been
set the
so
bar like that.
deeply rooted in, and when you finally
Violet's the only one that
reached
itched
Castilla
that.
City and the camera zoomed out to show off the magnitude of these massive skyscrapers, this was the moment I think Game Freak realized the potential of Pokemon in 3D. It might not look as impressive today, but at the time, these graphics were pushing the limits of the Nintendo DS hardware they ran on. You see, at the time Pokemon Black and White came out in the States, the Nintendo 3DS had already been announced,
Yeah, I was
and
already
the DS
really
was basically
confused,
on
like,
its final
why
breath.
isn't this for the
This probably put
3DS?
some pressure
I
on Game Freak
played
to start
Black and
improving
White
their 3D
on the
capabilities
original
for the
gray
next
DS,
generation, as
the
of course,
clunky
since they
one.
began making games,
So
all
I'm
they've really
playing
known is
that,
2D
seeing like all those 3D
I mean, I
models,
guess technically Pokemon Coliseum
and like the
XD already existed, but
like a
those
tiny
were developed
old
by a different
DS.
studio. So
He also
going back
fails
to
to
Black
mention
and White,
Battle
it took
Frontier
almost 2
or the
years
Battle
for the
Revolution.
sequels to come out, and visually
Well,
they
maybe
didn't
he
look
might
too
mention it
different
later, but
from
he didn't
their
mention it here.
predecessors, which makes me
Gale of Darkness, Coliseum, and then Battle Revolution are like the 3 real Pokemon games that came out at the time for a console. I think Battle Revolution came out 2008, 2007. I don't remember.
different studio. So going back to Black and White,
And then
it
there's
took
obviously
almost
Poke
2
Park,
years
but
for the sequels to come out, and visually they didn't look too different
it's
from
not
their
like a battle game,
predecessors, which makes me wonder if this whole time Game Freak was cooking up something entirely different in the background.
Oh, I remember seeing
It's
those
well known
trailers
at
for
this
Sun and
point
Moon.
that in order to
I
fulfill
like
the less than
analyzed
ideal
the
goals
fuck
of
out of
producing
that
at
with
least
like all the
one
other
main series
Pokemon.
game per year,
I was
Game
in
Freak
it.
appears to divide their workforce into separate teams for different projects. For example, in the most recent generation, we had an A team working on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, while the B team seemed to be working on Legends Arceus simultaneously, and that's likely why we saw a lot of ideas from Legends
Arceus.
cross over into
Looks
the Gen
a
1
bit
games. I have
unpolished,
a feeling in the
but
years after Pokemon Black and White,
gameplay-wise,
with
it's
the
really
3DS
fun.
looming overhead, a large part of Game Freak were designated to work on converting the animated sprites they'd worked so hard to perfect into 3D models. A monumental task considering how many Pokemon already existed.
There's like
at
already
the time,
500
and one that
Pokemon,
would prove
and then
if
they're
Game
going to
Freak
Gen
could continue
6
to stay at the top
for like
alongside other
600-ish
veteran
Pokemon.
Nintendo franchises that had successfully transitioned to the third dimension years ago. Thankfully for Game Freak, the hard work seemed to pay off, as when the first trailer of Pokemon X and Y came out, I definitely wasn't the only one that nearly lost my damn mind. When I first came up with the idea for this video,
oh man, I missed
kinda
that.
thought that
I missed
X
that
and Y
Victory
were
Road
the
intro.
first step in a
Karina's
downward
awesome.
spiral of quality for Pokemon games, but honestly, Gen 6 was kinda lit. I mean, Mega Evolutions alone were enough to cement it as a banger, but X and Y still had a lot of the qualities that made classic Pokemon games so fun to play over and over, and I think they get a lot of hate nowadays just for having the worst story. But after the magnum opus that was Pokemon Black and White's plot, it was going to be hard to follow up.
Yeah, exactly. See, he agrees.
In terms of graphics, though, I think X and Y did a really good job of translating the aesthetic of classic Pokemon into the third dimension. The world looked amazing and full of little details that made me want to search every nook and cranny for items and Pokemon. The characters somehow maintained the charm of the 2D sprites in the overworld while looking more realistic in cutscenes and battles. And then of course there were the actual Pokemon, which seemed to finally be realizing their true potential as you could now interact with the sprite creatures we all fell in love with in more engaging and immersive ways than we ever.
Guys, have you ever played X and Y or Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire? Always go to Pokemon Me when you have the time. It is so busted. Your Pokemon will clutch out, it will dodge moves, it will land crits. They won't die. It's so busted. No one talks about it. Everyone's like, oh, Need for Sylveon? No, this is the best feature. Pokemon Me is the best feature not only because you could play with your Pokemon, also they'll actually be like so much more useful. It's amazing. Like I've lived so much things because of the time I spent with them. And even like Sword and Shield, I like that feature with like the camp. They'll still clutch out for you, and I like that a lot.
Dreamed of. I know a lot of
It's
fans seem to
actually
think
so
that
busted.
X and Y
It's
were
one of
the
my favorite
beginning of
things.
the end in terms of difficulty as well, mainly because these were the first games that introduced the new style of EXP
Oh, that was
share,
busted.
but at least
This
back
really
then,
broke the
players
game.
weren't forced to use it, and I honestly don't even think the EXP share is why Pokemon games are so easy
And now it's
nowadays,
automatically
but that's
on.
a topic for another video. Moving on to Pokemon Sun and Moon and
I love
their
this game.
interesting sequels. Honestly, these
I didn't
games
play all.
weren't all that
I
bad
can't beat all
either.
this. I don't
Sure,
think.
I wasn't as big a fan of Z-moves
Gen
as
7
Mega
was a
Evolutions,
really
and
good
this gen
generation.
did start the trend of introducing a new gimmick every generation, but
It's a
most
really
of the
good
common
generation.
complaints I hear with Pokemon today didn't
People
really
might dunk on
become
it,
apparent until Gen 8. When Pokemon seemed to
but
face
Gen 7 was
another rough
really good in my
transition
opinion.
from the comfort of
I'd
our
say
hands
it's
and
like
into
top
the
3
realm
Pokemon
of
games.
high-definition home consoles in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Well, technically, Let's Go
It was
Pikachu
better
and
than
Eevee came
Sword and Shield,
first, but
honestly.
it feels like beyond just graphics, Game Freak were really trying to elevate the Pokemon
I love the
experience this
style.
generation with the introduction
The
of
main
concepts
character,
like the
the
wild
boy main
area,
character,
and
and
can't
Galar
say
looked
it really
whack.
worked for me.
That
Going
was so
from the
funny.
carefully thought out routes of
That was
previous
fun.
regions where it
Run
felt
away
like
from
every
Metro.
little rock and flower was deliberately placed in the most aesthetic way, to this open, barren wasteland where objects feel more randomly generated and lacking any sort of cohesion with each other, coupled with Pokemon not spawning nearly as often as the trailers made it seem at least, and it makes the whole world somehow feel less alive than previous games where you couldn't even see Pokemon outside the grass yet. At least Pokemon Legends Arceus seemed to fix a lot of the problems I had with the more open concept of the wild area. It might be the fact that it's not an entirely open world and more like separate open areas, but even with hundreds of random items and Pokemon scattered about, it feels like everything belongs where it is, which is just not the same vibe I get with the wild area and open world of Paldea. But I feel like I'm getting off topic now, and as I mentioned, this seems to be more of a problem with the open world rather than Pokemon switching to 3D, though I suppose the two go hand in hand when it comes to explaining our next topic. Pokemon have never been strangers to trying out new features for one game and completely forgetting about it in future entries. I could list almost 100 ideas that could have been further developed and probably become series staples, but sadly just didn't get enough time in the oven. It feels like recently though, more often than not, these new ideas end up half-baked or just not as fun as those of games past. I mean, how many times are they gonna rehash the Pokemon Tower when all I want is another Battle Frontier?
I do miss it. I wish I could play against the Battle Frontier. I played in...
were the Pokemon themselves.
I played the Battle Frontier in
remembers
like
the National Dex fiasco,
Soul
right?
Silver.
I was never
I
too
remember that.
adamant about it,
It's
to be
stupid.
honest, since I
Oh,
found
no.
collecting more than 400 Pokemon in a single game way too tedious. In fact, I don't remember ever completing the regional Dex in older games, so if anything, this was a pretty good change in my book. And it made some sense at the time considering the amount of work that goes into creating and animating every single Pokemon model, except for one little problem. They totally reused the models from X and Y. I've read some conflicting articles saying that Game Freak actually created new models for Sword and Shield, but data mines definitely suggest otherwise. Not that I really have a problem with them reusing old models, as it saves a lot of time that could be put towards other things like, sandwiches, I guess? This is my biggest gripe with the whole transition to home console. No, not the sandwiches, but rather the lack of fun features, specifically in the post-game compared to past generations. It's a sad reality, but a lot of the things that made Pokemon
I never got to that.
So
I can't
back
beat
in
this
the
game.
day
I wish
are
I
now
could see
reserved
this.
for the extra paywall known as DLC. I don't want to get super into the nitty-gritty of modern post-games, or lack of them, but it just feels kind of wrong how little we seem to get now compared to past games, especially considering they used to cost less too. And if the updated graphics are supposed to be what makes up for this new price, then I think I would have rather kept the old school sprites and animations of black and white if it meant having more fun and challenging games. I know I've been pretty negative on the modern games so far, but it's not all bad, as the shift to 3D also brought along some of my favorite features in Pokemon, like the ability to customize our character. Technically, it was possible to add this feature back in the 2D games, like we've seen in some fan games, but the protagonist being 3D makes them so much more personalizable and definitely added to that feeling of immersion within
I
the
love
world
the
of
whole
Pokemon.
style in Galar.
Even in games like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, where we have just a few select outfits, every new playthrough feels a bit more unique by just wearing a different costume. Then Scarlet and Violet came
Scarlet
along and
Violet's
totally ruined it
outfit
by
is so
forcing you
whack.
to wear a school uniform. But anyway,
So
another
whack.
amazing addition that came with the 3D shift is
So
the ability to interact with our Pokemon in ways that simply wouldn't have
Interacting
been
is so
possible
fun.
if the game stayed 2D. Or
Yeah,
at least it
this
wouldn't
is
have
one of the
felt
reasons
nearly as
why I like
engaging.
3D.
Whether it's through picnics, camping, or good old-fashioned Pokemon and me, I absolutely adore being able to interact with these beloved creatures so many of us have bonded with, and seeing their reactions to getting pet on the head or even getting a ball thrown in their face. There's so many unique animations here, and
Wait,
I
when
know
he
Game
turns
Freak
off?
catches a lot of strays for
How?
reusing certain
Oh,
animations,
How and Hop
but
are the
in
same
general, I
thing.
feel like the Pokemon themselves look more alive than ever, especially in Scarlet and Violet. Sure, some signature moves, over-the-top animations seem to have been toned down when compared to Sword and Shield, but you could argue it makes battles snappier. Thinking about it, terastalizing feels like it takes forever sometimes.
It
Yeah,
does.
I'm okay with move animations getting toned down a bit. Honestly, I wish we could just skip all these cutscenes, but you can really see just how much work Game Freak put into updating some of these models and animations with their love child Charizard, who might just have had the biggest glow up I've ever seen for a 3D Pokemon.
I'm so tired of Charizard,
It totally
bro.
fits the personality I always imagined it having since way back in the Sprite days. While we're on the topic of updated designs, I want to end this whole segment with a bit of a trend I've noticed. Is it just me, or have starters become way more human-like? I'm not sure if it's because of the shift to 3D necessarily, but
Oh my
since
God.
Pokemon X and because of the
Wait.
shift to 3D,
I forgot about those characters. I forgot about Sita and Dexio. I forgot about them. They're so underutilized. At least they played a part in Sun and Moon. At the end where they're like, hey, you ever heard of Mega Stones? And they give you one. And Psyguard. That's all they were there for. They're just cleaning up the Gen 6 stuff. But, I mean, they have pretty cool designs.
3D necessarily,
I still like the
but
designs. They're
since
pretty cool.
Pokemon X and Y, I feel like the designs for starter Pokemon have gravitated towards a more humanoid aesthetic. Maybe it's just that humanoid characters are easier to rig and animate. I'm not really too knowledgeable in that field, so maybe animators can let me know in the comments, but it feels like even the more monster-based creatures have adapted human-like features. Perhaps player data showed that humanoid Pokemon were way more popular, so these type of designs became preferable. If you
Okay,
want my
except
theory though, I'm pretty
Skeletor.
sure some of the higher-ups at Pokemon just realized half the fanbase are into that kind of thing. There's one more big change that came with the shift to 3D, and it's what some might call an over-reliance on regional gimmicks. I'm not trying to say I dislike the gimmicks per se. I mean, obviously I like some more than others.
I never seen
but
this.
Nowadays it kind of feels like Game Freak think they absolutely need some kind of big twist to sell new games. I gotta imagine coming up with and designing these unique gimmicks every single new generation must be extremely time consuming, and another reason why Pokemon games feel like they get less content nowadays. What used to be these fleshed out regions with posters full of fun,
I never got to go there. I can't go there because my DS is broke.
By Terra raids, which some people find fun, sure, but it only
like
lasts a
Terra
couple
raids.
hours till you catch it, and then you just wait till the next event. I guess my point with this whole segment is to illustrate just how much change we've gone through these last few generations, and what this constant innovation could mean for the future of Pokemon.
Is this how we're going back to a 2D future?
The shift to 3D has brought the Pokemon series, I still can't help but wonder what a modern day game might look like with the classic style.
This Area Zero?
2D games that look absolutely stunning and manage to hold their own even against major AAA titles, and it really makes me wonder what the series could have looked like if Game Freak continued to hone that art style. Maybe Pokemon games would have looked a little more like Octopath Traveler, which combined 2D sprites with 3D worlds and dynamic lighting to create a pretty visually impressive looking style. I've heard a lot of gamers dub this sort of look 2D HD, which makes a lot of sense as it feels somewhere between retro and modern, and it definitely suits the world of Pokemon. But what if instead Game Freak decided to scrap the pixelated sprites altogether and gone for a style closer to Nexomon, which uses hand-drawn anime-style artwork while maintaining the classic top-down perspective? I've always had a bit of an obsession with Ken Sugimori's artwork, and just imagining all the Pokemon animated in his style does sound pretty sick, but Would sticking with what they knew have really benefited Pokemon in the long term? I mean, if it saves production costs by reusing certain assets, then I say why not? They could at least try it out with a future remake or spin-off title. But I also gotta admit, as a fan of Black and White, I would much rather see the iconic landmarks of Unova remade in a more grandiose way. So I'd like to propose
they need to do that for the Gen 5 remake, which I will buy day of.
For being on the 3DS, I would argue these games still look pretty good.
Wait, why does this look good? Is this like... Is this a mod? I don't think the 3DS look like... It doesn't look that good, I don't think. Wow. This looks really good.
Especially when upscaled on emulators, the quality is honestly good enough to port to Switch as is. But let's not give Game Freak any ideas here.
Hey,
I think Pokemon X and Y might just be the perfect games to become the series' first D-makes. And by that I mean taking the 3D world and turning it back in time to the top-down pixelated era. I think it'd be really interesting to see how some of the more open areas of modern games could be adapted to fit the old style. And how awesome would it be to get official sprites for some of the newer Pokemon?
I like to see that. Then again,
there's plenty of other games out there continuing to push the limits of pixel art
that looks cool.
That honestly blow my mind. So you guys keep doing what you're doing, and I guess we'll let Pokemon keep doing whatever this is. To try and answer the question I started this whole video with, should Pokemon have stayed 2D? I still feel like it's up to preference, but if I absolutely had to choose, then I'd honestly have to say no. While I would have loved to see what the series could have looked like if they continued honing that 2D style, or even gone for the hand-drawn approach, since I've always been a fan of
I love how you just poured that berry.
I can't deny that a lot of that desire is driven by nostalgia. Without this transition, we wouldn't be able to interact with our beloved creatures in all the ways that the modern style allows us to. Pokemon Go would have never existed. There might not have been a Detective Pikachu movie. Would the trading cards still have been as popular as they've become? And most importantly, would the new generation of players have been interested in a game that feels outdated in the eyes of modern gaming? You may have noticed I used the term evolution a few times throughout this video, both as a pun because, you know, Pokemon evolved, but also because the shift to 3D really feels like the natural evolution of the series. And as I pointed out, I think a lot of the real problems plaguing the core games today seem to be more of a systematic issue. Unreasonable expectations of releasing a game every single year, and the constant obsession with wanting to create new features every generation instead of improving on things that worked, makes it feel like Pokemon is always taking one step forward and 2 steps back. The games undoubtedly have a lot of work still poured into them, and I can see the improvements being made, but it's just so slow compared to other contemporary franchises that get so many more years to polish and perfect their games. I believe one day we'll get to see that open world experience we all
dream like this would be sick.
But at the rate they're going, we might just have to wait like 10 more generations. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and please let me know if there's any other topics in the Pokemon world you'd like me to discuss. I've been wanting to create more analytical or video essay style content for a while now, and I figured this would be a good place to start since it's a topic I'm quite passionate about.
Yeah. But yeah. I think he's right that we should not go back. I don't see a point of going back, because like he said, we wouldn't be able to interact with all our Pokemon as we could now. And what's it? It would definitely be unappealing to the newer gen of players or fans, because like, even if they did do a demake, which would be really cool, that's just a fantasy at this point. It's probably gonna be like some fans gonna do it. It's gonna be super low key though, because you know they're onto us. But yeah, have like the thought about a demake once Gen 6 hits, very interesting. But I also think they could do so much more with, if they were to do a demake with Kalos, they could do so much more if they just scaled it up, because there's already so much potential of, well, I mean, when you first saw Kalos, you're already like, whoa, this is really cool. There's already like, it's already 3D. It's the first time we're all seeing that together. But then we see it like more like on a grander scale compared to what it was in the 3DS. Then we'll have that same reaction, but like even better, because it's you know, new technology, and like we've improved so far past Gen 6. Like, wow, it's like, it looks so much better. Like, Kalos was so much more alive, which I'm hoping that does happen in the future. But yeah, I also don't think it should have stayed 2D, which is as much as interesting as it would be. Realistically, Game Freak wouldn't want to do that. A lot of people sure wouldn't want to do that, even though we would want to. Realistically, what will we get from a demake for just going back when we could do so much more with what we have now? And it's also just more so just like itching a curiosity of what it would have looked like rather than just focus on what we have. Because I think what we have the 3D Pokemon games, it's something. It's something, but at least we aren't going back, you know. Except for like the whole paywall thing. Like I got what he was saying when like he's talking about, oh, there used to be more content in the older games that was much cheaper. Now we have a paywall, which does suck. Which does suck because I did not like the Sword and Shield post game where you have to fight Shieldbert and Swordbert because they look ridiculous. But yeah, uh, I think I'll end it here. I basically just said what I want to say, reacted to it. We basically share the same opinion on it. But yeah, if you like this, like it, subscribe, also, or maybe like suggest other things I might want to check out. Also, give MunchingOrange a huge follow, man. I he he's such a I love him so much. I still love MunchingOrange. Uh, yeah. But yeah, he's part of the reason why I like making videos, especially Pokemon related videos. Yeah, do that, and yeah, I'll end it here. Thanks for checking this out. Check that video out. Check the real video out, and muy bueno.